investments in the system that we now see having issues in Newark.
Now, as I said, get your glasses ready for the wine fest. I'm going to talk about that more in a second in the context of Jeanine Pirro, who was just brought into the Trump regime. Here they are on Fox on the Will Cain Show, whining about the new Pope, Leo XIV, and Fox is already on the tirade and saying he's a woke Pope, he cares about DEI and LGBTQ and climate change and George Floyd, DEI woke Pope, wah, wah, wah. Here, play this clip.
This question, Raymond, based upon that important part of the papacy. And I ask this with a great amount of humility, Raymond, because I am not Catholic. Yeah. And I understand that the Pope is selected and ordained by God. And it is not a political office. It's not the same thing as an electing a United States senator. No. So in some ways, it's inappropriate to say, is he conservative? Is he liberal? But is he progressive in the vein of Pope Francis? That seems to be the great question. And I hear you saying the answer is yes. And why that matters is where he may stand and where he may lead his flock on issues as far and as wide as climate change, on DEI, on LGBTQ, on a whole host of issues. And we wonder, where will this new vision be for the Catholic Church?
Well, hope springs eternal, Will, even in the eternal city. And here's what I'd say. It's a mixed bag. The record is a mixed bag. But there are indications. When you saw the Pope come out today, okay, he was wearing the traditional mazzetto, that red garment, atop his white cassock. That's kind of a cry back to the past. That's a wink at tradition. Right. So a lot of traditionalists and conservative people said, oh, look, he's dressing like a Pope. We frankly haven't seen this in 12 years with Pope Francis. So maybe Leo will be, as he mentioned in his speech today, a bridge builder.
They literally whine about everything. Yes, Pope Leo XIV, who was previously a cardinal out of Chicago, who was mostly living in Peru, and then the Vatican. Oh, yes. He has empathy and he cares about people. Ooh, that must make him so woke. You know, one of the funny things that we talked about on the Midas Touch podcast, though, is one of the bishops on Donald Trump's religious council had previously said that the Vatican would never name an American pope unless and until America's power was declining, because otherwise the Vatican would never want to name an American pope. If America was leading the world in other areas, they wouldn't want the America to lead in religious areas. So I think that the Vatican was sending a clear message saying, all right, time for an American pope, as Donald Trump has put the United States of America in decline. That's my theory of what went down right there. Then you have Peter Navarro. Peter Navarro, of course, someone who was in jail for obstruction of Congress. Here he's asked by Will Cain, so what about the plans? What's the trade policy, bro? What you got? To which Peter Navarro says, it's all about my brother. He goes, trust in Trump, my brother. That's what you got to do. Here, play this clip.
Good news for Americans. And so trust in Trump, my brother, and let's see what happens. But we are changing the world here in terms of international trade, and Donald Trump is doing that. That's going to be his legacy.
And not only
so, then state regime media brings on RFK Jr., and RFK Jr. brags about a room at HHS where they track people. He goes, this is where we track people. Let's play this clip.
All right, Mr. Secretary, this is the Operations Center.
Yeah, this is the Secretary's Incident Operations Center. And this is where we track, any kind of incident. It could be hurricanes, it could be chemical spills, it could be a measles outbreak, which is what they're tracking right now.
Let's go around this way. These are your guys at the...
Now, as I said, get your wine glass ready. It's going to be a wine fest. Here we learn that Jeanine Pirro from Fox, one of their hosts, was just appointed to be the interim United States attorney for Washington, D.C. Here, play this clip.
Here are some other headlines tonight, breaking just minutes ago. One of the co-hosts of The Five, Judge Jeanine Pirro, will be appointed interim United States Attorney for the District of Columbia. President Trump announced that on Truth Social just moments ago. Jeanine was Assistant District Attorney for Westchester County, New York, and then went on to serve as County Judge and District Attorney, where she was the first woman ever to be elected to those positions. She will be leaving Fox to take this position, and we obviously wish her well.
And how did she get that job? By going on rants like this, as our editor-in-chief Ron Filipkowski says. The best way to get appointed to a senior position in the Trump White House is by doing this. Here, play this clip.
I want to know from the Department of Justice why you're doing this. I want to know from the FBI whether or not this is legitimate, because everything that you've done regarding Donald Trump has been illegal, illegitimate, and immoral, and the country knows it. And you have destroyed our faith in the justice system.
Just one question, Judge.
It's not Donald Trump's fault. It's their fault. I don't think it's fair.
It's worth noting as well that, after Will Cain talked about the Pope, and they called him like a woke Pope, they basically tried to ignore the Pope for the rest of the night on Fox. So let me show you, for example, the leading stories on all three news networks, and you'll see what Fox was covering while the other networks were covering the Pope. Here, play this clip.
For the first time ever, a pope from Chicago, the first from the United States and only the second after Argentina's Pope Francis from the New World.
Good evening from New York. I'm Chris Hayes, and we have a new pope. He's from Chicago. Yes, America. We have a pope named Bob, and he's a White Sox fan.
It wasn't a ghost. Joe Biden's back.
Now, speaking of the wine fest, here is J.D. Vance. He's saying it's so weird here. He goes, here's why we think little girls should only get $2. Because when you go to war, little girls, you're going to hope that the weapons are made in America. So sacrifice, suck it up, $1. Play this clip.
So the president said, maybe American kids should have $3 instead of 30 or whatever the number was. Do you agree? Do you tell the people of this country that you need to make some sacrifices in order to reorganize this bad trade relationship?
Well, I think the president's point here is that, we do need to become more self-reliant, and that's not going to happen overnight, and it's not always going to be easy, Martha. But what I'd ask people is not whether they want $2 or $5 or $20 for their kids. I'd ask American moms and dads, would you like to be able to go into a pharmacy and know that the drugs your kids need are actually available to you as an American parent? Would you like to, God forbid, if your country goes to a war and your son or daughter is sent off to fight, would you like to know that the weapons that they have are good American-made stuff, not made by a foreign adversary? What President Trump is talking about is bringing self-reliance back to the United States economy.
Here they are. Here's Will Cain whining about Democratic Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett.
Slap me and wake me the up, because I'm ready to get on with it.
If you could speak directly to Elon Musk, what would you say?
Off.
All of this obviously leads to the question of who voted for Jasmine Crockett. They should be embarrassed. Joe Pags isn't.
Here, MAGA Republican Senator Mark Wayne Mullen is whining about Kamala Harris. Play this clip.
Hands the Republican people. Kamala Harris decided to go to the left of even where the party was at. They thought that was their winning piece. They thought if they go farther to the DEI, farther to this woke movement, that the American people was at that moment ready to make the change. What they found out, it's not happening. What's interesting, they lost the election. They still haven't learned their lesson. Look what they're doing right now.
Back to Sean Duffy. He's whining about Duran Duran. Play the clip.
First, so the systems were developed when Elvis was a star.
Rolling Stones were a star.
Goodness.
When Duran Duran was making music, I mean, we go back to the 60s and 70s, we laid out a lot of the infrastructure. It looks like it was from, remember the movie War Games or Apollo 13? It looks like equipment from the movie sets for those movies. It looks like we got the infrastructure from the Smithsonian, but it's not. It's the equipment that we use in American air traffic control towers. Really, really old.
And here is Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick, saying that Trump did Britain a favor by letting them keep their car industry and only hitting them with a 10% tariff, as Aaron Rupert says here. Play that clip.
But the British is really opening market, $5 billion of new opportunity for Americans to export to Britain.